going on, everybody? It's Fabs here. Welcome back to the Believe Fantasy Football Show with yours truly and my pal Tass on the other side of the virtual glass. I got to be honest with you, man. I am not in a happy, jubilant mood after Monday night. I mean, both games were bad. Nick Chubb getting hurt was awful. Everyone on Twitter or X, whatever it is, certainly shocked at the injury. It was an awful looking injury, and it kind of put a more somber mood on a couple of NFL games that kind of left a lot to be desired, right?
Yeah, I actually saw someone that I follow on X post about not wanting to see the video anymore, which I completely understand because it's traumatic just to watch. And someone in the
Yeah.
comments was like, "Oh, well, if you don't want to see that, here, let me show you this UFC knockout that's also horrific." And I was just like, at what point do we just cut? Like, come on, like let's cut it out, Like,
I stopped following TMZ because all they post is garbage. Somebody getting shot. Here's the video. Fights. I don't want to do. And now we got this fan of the Dolphins who died after getting punched by a Patriot. Just, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I'll get pissed. But Monday was a rough night for fantasy managers, for Nick Chubb in particular. And we obviously hope that he's going to be able to come back better than ever. But boy, that was a gnarly looking injury. It reminded me of, remember like Willis McGahee had a gnarly injury like that. I mean, there's been several historically, but it kind of just took the breath out of you, right? I mean,
yeah.
He's one of the best running backs in the league, maybe the best running back in the league from a fantasy standpoint. And I hate to talk about fantasy when it comes to a man's livelihood, but that's what we do. From a fantasy standpoint, I can't remember the running back position being this dire to start a season, and maybe at any point during any season. Saquon Barkley's not going to play for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Austin Ekeler didn't play last week, and now we're hearing no timetable for his return. 3 guys who were first-round picks, or at least all top 15 picks, at a position that's already taken a hit in value,
Right.
now out for some period of time with Chubb out for the season.
Not to mention Dobbins, who went down last week, who's out for the season, right?
Oh, there's more. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's on PUP. J.K. Dobbins, as you just mentioned, is out for the year. Aaron Jones didn't play last week. Alvin Kamara is suspended for another game. We haven't had him. Ken Gainwell got hurt, didn't play this past week. Jamal Williams got hurt on Monday night. I mean, that's just the injuries. That's a long list. Now think about it. There's 32 teams in the NFL. 32. And not all of them have 2 fantasy relevant running backs. And most of them have just 1. You look at some of the players that are in that category. I'll call it the running back stink list. Okay. Josh Jacobs, awful. Joe Mixon, awful. Cam Akers got benched and he was a healthy scratch last week. We can only hope that at some point he's traded. Najee Harris has been awful. Javonte Williams has been awful. Alexander Madison has been awful. Miles Sanders continues to be awful. I can't stand that dude. I'm sure he's a great human being. He's a lousy fantasy running back. And everyone tries to pump him up like he's something better than he is. Dameon Pierce has been bad. Dalvin Cook's been bad. Isaiah Pacheco's been bad. Khalil Herbert's been bad. Antonio Gibson is waiver wire fodder at this point. It's falling apart at the running back position to now where, we're going to be maybe devaluing this position even more into the future until we get some really good young backs coming out of the college ranks. Seriously, this position's a nightmare. And for people like me who went 0 RB or hero RB, my running back position is shot to hell. Even people who went with running backs early. If you had Nick Chubb, if you have Barkley, if you've got Ekeler, you're in trouble right now. And the problem is, Tass, there's no solutions. Like, okay, Jerome Ford is going to be the most popular pickup off the waiver wire, and he probably should be. But what if Cleveland trades for Akers or signs Kareem Hunt back to the roster or trades Jonathan Taylor, pie in the sky scenario? Is Jerome Ford going to be worth that high priority or all your fab budget? I don't know. And the fact of the matter is that the timing is bad too, because we're going to be putting in claims and we're going to be putting in our bids for our waiver wire players, which we're going to talk about tonight. And unless the Browns sign somebody or make a trade for somebody before that, we're going in blind with Jerome Ford. You could spend 90% of your budget on him and maybe it works out. Or maybe they sign Kareem Hunt and now he's in a committee and it doesn't work out. Maybe you throw a few bucks at Kareem Hunt. He seems to be the most likely addition, but who knows? The Browns didn't want him. Now they're desperate. Maybe they'll take him back. I mean, Fournette's still floating around out there. I don't know. Running back's a mess right now. It really is.
Yeah.
There's a handful of backs you can trust, and that's it.
Right.
And Josh Jacobs isn't even on that list now.
No, not at all. I felt like personally that there was going to be some regression to the mean for Josh Jacobs after his season last year.
No question. But not like
Not like
the
this.
guy rushed for negative yards last week.
Yeah, it was brutal. And the Bills have a good rush defense. But if the Raiders presumably going forward have no offensive firepower whatsoever, they're going to load up the defense. Are going to load up the box against Jacobs, and he's going to have a really tough time going forward. So it's definitely, that was not promising to see. I mean, if you own Christian McCaffrey, if you own Derrick Henry, and you own Bijan Robinson, congratulations, because those guys are really doing it for you.
Might I suggest going to church every Sunday before the games and lighting a candle that these guys stay healthy, because it's been a mash unit. It's brutal. And I think the Chubb thing kind of just was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Barkley's already hurt. X already hurt. We don't have Jonathan Taylor. We don't have Alvin Kamara. Dobbins is already hurt. Another one now. I mean, this is week 2. And we've already lost all these guys for some duration of time. It's brutal, man. It's brutal. I have no answers because there's nothing you can do. Now, I would say, and I love making trades, and I'll always make trades. And if you're not trading, you're not trying. I always say that. But to be quite honest with you, who's going to trade you a good running back right now? I mean, honestly, they're like gold pieces. And you're going to have to pay through the nose to get one. I mean, hell, if I got Rashad White right now, somebody wants a running back, I'm like, all right, give me Stephon Diggs. I'll give him to you. Honestly, who's going to trade one of these running backs away? Christian McCaffrey, I mean, geez Louise, Tony Pollard, Henry, I mean, all these guys are like gold. So I will say this. It's a bad spot right now for the running backs with the contracts, and then that whole thing that the NFL sent a letter to the PA about there being some sort of, I don't know if it's rumor or where it was dug up that the PA was telling players to feign injuries. It's all like a soap opera.
Yeah, yesterday didn't feel like the right timing for that to get released, just in my opinion.
And then Chubb gets hurt,
Right.
and those 2 games too. Not for nothing, those games were bad. Like the Browns-Steelers game at least had a little bit of excitement at the end. The Carolina-New Orleans game was awful. It was a preseason game with the starters. It was awful. Just terrible. And we had no fantasy production from anybody. Olave was okay. Mike Thomas looked like he was going to have a big game, and he didn't catch a pass in the second half, basically. The running, Tony Jones, who the hell started him? He's not even rostered. And now if Williams is hurt, who's playing for them next week? Is it Kendre Miller or Tony Jones? I don't know.
Right. That's what.
Yes, Tony Jones, but Kendre Miller's banged up.
That's the real problem, right? Is that the way that coaching staffs are treating when their starting running back goes down, it automatically becomes by committee, and you have no idea who's going to succeed and who's not. I mean, look at the Bills, right? Yeah. Tavius Murray had a touchdown, so did Damian Harris, and James Cook was productive, but you can't rely on those other
two. They play the Raiders.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, they got a way tougher matchup this week.
Yeah, it's not going to happen again where all 3 of those guys are productive from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah. It's rough. And that game was rough to watch. And then the Browns game and it's funny too, because like Joe Buck and Aikman, you could tell they were like, dude, what? This is awful. Like, without saying it, I guarantee in the breaks, they were looking at each other thinking, what the hell is this? First play of the game, with the turnover. Watson played awful.
Terribly.
I mean, I don't know if the Browns regret giving him that money, but he hadn't looked good. Week 1 he played okay. Last night, Monday night, he was dreadful. The best thing about the Browns in that game were those uniforms. Those were beautiful. I love those white
Same.
uniforms. And Jerome Ford looked really good. You got the Titans this week. Awful matchup. Probably going to play him. And that's the thing, too. Like, I write start him and sit him for Sports Illustrated. At running back, Tass, almost every running back that I tell people to sit, they're going to have to play. You're going to have to play. You can find the column, of course, comes out every Wednesday. Little teaser. I got Jerome Ford as a sit, but you have to play him. You have to. The Titans defense is awesome against the run.
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons.
Jamal Williams did garbage, nothing against him, and then Kelly did nothing against him. They're really good against the run. Now, you could throw the ball down their throats all day long. They're really good against the run, but you got to play Jerome Ford. Like right now, you're just looking for volume, even if the matchup is crap. Maybe you get lucky like Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams, you play the Niners? That guy had 2 touchdowns. You got to get lucky. You're looking for volume. Volume is more important than matchup right now at running back. It really is. And we got to talk about that. Even if the matchup is horrible, that's why it's like, for me, it's like start them or, I don't know, crush your fingers. Because it's hard to tell people to sit any running backs right now. Like Khalil Herbert, I think, all right, a lot of people, including myself, thought he could be a sleeper. I mean, after 2 weeks, no. I don't know if I have to play him. I think I could probably bench him, but who knows? What happens if you have Nick Chubb as your RB1 and, your RB2 is Alexander Madison, who's been horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad spot to be in. So
you might have DeAndre Swift and Kyren Williams and have the best 1-2 punch in the NFL at the running back position. Like that. That's where we're at right now.
Kyren Williams is gonna end up being a league winner, and Puka Nacua is gonna end. I don't know if he's gonna be a league winner because Cooper Kupp is supposed to come back, but boy, those 2 guys, even Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell's been really good, but no one's talking about him because Puka's going crazy. And not only that, you want to talk about, having hard times. What the hell's going on with Joe Burrow and Justin Fields? Oh my God. Now I know what's going on with Burrow, the calf. He's not healthy. He's not healthy. And I remember when he got hurt, I don't remember what analyst it was from ESPN I was watching who said I had a similar injury and I was out a lot longer than Joe Burrow is projected to be out. Maybe they underestimated what this thing was going to turn into. And boy, I tell you, we as a fantasy community might be in a lot of trouble with the Bengals. And they play Monday night this week. Jake Browning is the backup there in Cincinnati. Imagine if we got to start Jamar Chase with Jake Browning under center and T. Higgins. That ain't good, man. That ain't good. And Justin Fields, it seems like he's got worse than he was last year. They brought in DJ Moore. Darnell Mooney's healthy. At least we thought he was. They brought in Robert Tonyan to a lesser degree. Still inaccurate. Not running the ball nearly as much. I don't know what the Bears and Luke Getsy are doing on the offensive side, but they got to change things up because they look like crap. That whole offense looks like crap. Anyways, that'll bring us into our risers and fallers, and we may as well start with the fallers. And Justin Fields is right there. Listen, he's been brutal, man. He's completing 60% of his passes. That's it. He's turning the ball over way too much. The Bears look lost on offense. They don't have an identity. And they were supposed to be better, and they're not. Offensive line was supposed to be better. So far, it's not. They've got issues, man. They've got, and now you got Kansas City. Good luck. If you have now, I don't know if Anthony Richardson is going to play this week because he had the concussion. But if you have like Anthony Richardson or Jared Goff, for example, I'm sitting Justin Fields this week. I don't think just because you drafted him in round 5 or 6 that you have to start him.
So where's the line there? Where do you draw the line with, okay, now you do have to start him?
I haven't done the rankings yet. It's too early in the week. But just off the top of my head, aside from like the obvious guys who you're always going to start over Justin Fields, but you're not going to have, Mahomes and Fields. Tua, Goff,
Dak.
Richardson, Cousins. Cousins got the Chargers this week. That's going to be a really high scoring game. Geno's got Carolina this week. I mean, and you can make an argument for starting all these quarterbacks over Joe Burrow too. You really could. You could. Not Daniel Jones. He's got the Niners on Thursday night. Want nothing to do with him. Russell Wilson against Miami. Dak against Arizona. All these quarterbacks. Not Love. Bad matchup against New Orleans. Bad matchup this week. But if Love had a better matchup, I'd say him too.
What about Ritter?
No, I'm not that brave.
You gotta.
I know he had a good statistical game last year. I'm not that brave.
Well, he ran one in. He ran one in. That's why I said it, because of the matchup against.
Well, no. I mean, in DFS, okay,
sure,
I could go there. He's going to be cheap, but I'm not going there in a traditional league.
Yeah, the way I looked at it was because I have Fields on one of my rosters, and I was like, do I want him on the off chance that they're in the locker room, they're telling him, look, use your legs. Like, we got to win ourselves a football game here.
No, I get it. I get it.
And he comes out with 40 points. You don't want to be on the end of, I started Desmond Ritter because I lost faith in Justin Fields, right?
That's too wild for me. Like, Dak against Arizona or Tua, against Denver, yeah. Or Goff at home, yeah. Sign me up. Richardson, hell yeah. And Richardson, he was lighting the Texans up like a Christmas tree before he got hurt. Ultimately, it was a really good week for quarterbacks, actually. A lot of quarterbacks scored a ton of points. I think he was like the QB 17 or 18, but he could have been QB 1 the way that he was going. And that's against a tough Texans defense, at least against the pass. They did have some injuries, though. Joe Burrow, awful. Last week, 15 points maybe. Joe Burrow's a 4th-round pick. I need more than that. And hell, I mean, if a week or two will get him healthy, then sit him for a week or two and get him back. But at that point, you might be 0-4 if, Jake Browning's your quarterback. So the Bengals got some hard decisions to make. And so the fantasy managers, because it's a Monday night, it's the last game of the weekend. That's a rough one. They got another 2 games on Monday night at the same time. It's stupid. I hate it. It's so dumb. We'll stick with the fallers. Josh Jacobs. He's averaging 1.6 yards per carry. The guy led the league in rushing yards last year. I knew regression was coming. I didn't know that this was coming. Hopefully he bounces back. Dameon Pierce, another guy, on the running back stinkum list. I mean, he's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. The Texans keep falling into negative game scripts, and he doesn't do anything in the passing game. Dameon Pierce is not a good starter this week against Jacksonville. But you know what? Everyone's going to have to play him because there's no running backs left. There's not. It's brutal. Nuke Hopkins. If Nuke Hopkins has a good game, I'm trying to trade him. Because he didn't practice last week. I get it. He played, he had 4 catches. He's averaging 52 yards a game. Only 2 weeks, small sample size. But I mean, the guy has been hurt more often than not the last couple of years. And I don't like the fact that ankle injury is already popping up for him in week 2. And it's still in the back of my mind, it's still like Julio Jones, Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, all went to the Titans late in their career, weren't any good.
Well,
and I didn't think Hopkins would be a part of that list, but so far, not good.
Tannehill was 20 for 24. He was excellent from a passer rating standpoint, from a completion percentage standpoint. You would have thought that if he only threw 24 passes, he's probably peppering them, across the middle of the field, short gains, little slant routes.
Yep.
That's Hopkins. That's where he lives, right? But it wasn't. It was Trailenberg's deep, and that's what the play action opens up. Is you have to pull the safeties in. You can throw the ball over the top. So maybe that's just not where Tannehill is going to be successful this year, and that's where DeAndre Hopkins lives. And
I mean, Nuke had 13 targets in week 1, so that was good.
It was,
but let's see if he practices this week. They've got the Browns. Browns defense is good. Browns defense is pretty good. So, risers. Daniel Jones, after the stink bomb against my beloveds in week 1, came back and completely, what was that line from Dumb and Dumber? Remember? Completely, I can't remember it.
Just when I thought
it'll come to me.
I can't.
It'll come to me.
Yeah.
It'll come to me. He had a big game, over 30 fantasy points, and it was bad in the beginning. Yeah, they were getting killed by the Cardinals. And we got good Daniel Jones in week 2. Don't start him against the Niners, by the way. And we'll talk about that matchup on Thursday's edition of the podcast. So, Brian Robinson, holy crap. Like, you want to talk about a guy who people weren't talking about very much? He is the featured back for the Commanders now. 87 yards on the ground, couple of touchdowns. He even had 2 catches. I mean, he's turned Antonio Gibson into dust. He's waiver wire fodder. So
He's a stud. Like,
and this week the Commanders got the Bills. I don't care. I'm playing Brian Robinson. I don't care. I'm playing him. A volume, man, and he's been effective. DeAndre Swift, also, guy rushed for 175 yards. And the thing that stinks is that, like, someone like me who went and got Gainwell everywhere, now it's like, well, so much for that. It was fun for a week. How do they not use Swift? And I don't even know if Gainwell's healthy. And that game's on Monday night. They got the Bucs on Monday night. So we may not know if Gainwell's going to play or not. Could be the Swift show again. And then Kyron Williams. This guy's the second highest scoring running back after 2 weeks behind Christian McCaffrey. Kyron flipping Williams. Yeah. And he had a huge game against the Niners of all teams. The Niners. Crazy. Nico Collins also is hot right now. He's averaged over 20 points a game. He had a 146-yard game this past week, scored a touchdown. CJ Stroud, I mean, statistically was great. Garbage time, negative game scripts, whatever you want to call it. You could pick him up off the waiver wire. I don't love the matchup this week, but you can pick him up off the waiver wire if you need a quarterback. But Nico Collins is finally meeting the expectations that we all sort of had for him last year. And going into this year, I mean, I was like, yeah, I'll take him late. So, good stuff for Nico Collins. Here's a crazy stat. The combined team wide receivers and the fantasy points they've scored, the number 1 team is the Dolphins. The number 2 team?
Houston Texans.
That's insane.
It's impressive. But it has so much to do with the game script. And if they're going to be a bad team for the whole season, then this is something that you can rely on with some of these guys. And Tank Dell got involved too, the rookie. That was cool to see. Where are the Packers on that list? Do you have that?
I could look it up. By the way, the line, he totally redeemed himself. That was the line.
Right. Just when I thought you couldn't do anything dumber, you go ahead and totally redeem yourself. Yeah.
You totally redeemed yourself. It took me a while to remember it, as all this fantasy football stuff is surging through my brain. So this is crazy. The Dolphins are 1. The Texans are 2. They're the only 2 teams that have over 50 points scored by their wide receivers. Bottom of the league, Atlanta, Carolina, the Browns, the Giants, and the Jets. Those are the bottom 5. The top 5 in terms of the best after Miami and Houston, Vikings, Rams, with no Cooper Kupp, Rams, and the Broncos. Marvin Mims had a good game.
Yeah.
This past
well,
week.
you got an extra 6 points in there for that Hail Mary that Johnson caught.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Let's get to the waiver wire pickups for week 3. Jerome Ford's at the top of the list, guys. But I don't know. I honestly don't know what the Browns are going to do. If they do nothing, Jerome Ford is going to be worth every bit of all of your fab budget, or at least most of it. I had a buddy of mine in a guillotine league. Nick Chubb became available after week 1. It's $1,000 cap on your budget. He spent $900 and something on Nick Chubb.
Oh.
Yeah, he's done.
Dang.
He's toast. He survived this week, but he's done after that. So Jerome Ford is widely available. He's the number 1 ad. No question. Hell, I'd put in a claim for Kareem Hunt just for, craps and giggles. Why not? Jordan Love, I talked about him last week. He's still not owned in enough leagues. I don't love the matchup this week against New Orleans, but the guy's had 3 touchdowns and over 20 points in 2 straight games. Pretty good. His teammate Jaden Reed also worth a look. I don't know what's going on with Christian Watson. He didn't play last week. Matchup's not great. Add and stash. Gus Edwards still available on ESPN in about 65% of leagues. Like we said, he wasn't the lead guy, but he led them in touchdowns with the rush and points. And so even though it was a committee in terms of like the snaps and the touches, Edwards is the guy to have there. He's got the Colts this week, and people are going to start him because you're desperate. Tutu Atwell. We didn't talk about Puka Nacua enough in the last week or two, have we? Well, guess what? We're not giving enough love to Tutu Atwell. The guys had 2 big games in a row. Tutu and Puka. That's a t-shirt, man. They should be selling that in LA. He's available in about 70% of leagues. Go get him. Until Cooper Kupp comes back, go get him. Zach Moss, massive game. 70% availability on ESPN. Now, he did play the Texans, and the Texans' run defense stinks. But we're looking for bodies right now. We're looking for warm bodies at running back. And he's going to get no other Colts running back touched the ball in that game. Nobody. Deion Jackson didn't touch the ball. They got Baltimore this week. It's not the best matchup in the world, but again, it's a warm body. We're looking for volume. Jake Ferguson of my beloved Dallas Cowboys, Tass of our beloved Dallas Cowboys, had a touchdown last week, 7 targets in the first game, got the Cardinals this week. Worst team in the league against tight ends for almost like the last 5 years, right? I mean, historically, they're just always bad against tight ends. There was 1 year in the last like 5 years that actually were good against tight ends. Everything else, they sucked. Listen, we liked Ferguson going into the season. He hadn't disappointed. He's been better than Kyle Pitts, but that's not saying much. CJ Stroud is available in a lot of leagues. Don't love him this week against Jacksonville, but still, if the Texans are going to be playing in negative game scripts all the time and they're going to have to throw the ball, what about the stat we just threw out at you? The Texans wide receivers have the second most points right now as a group behind Miami. CJ Stroud's week 1 wasn't great. Week 2 was very good. Guy's throwing for a ton of yards. I think I read something where last week was like the most yards an Ohio State quarterback has thrown for in an NFL game ever.
It's wild.
I'm on the how many good Ohio State quarterbacks?
Yeah, it's not that surprising when you crunch the numbers.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian Hoyer. Man, remember Art? What was his name? Art Schlichter. I think the guy got drafted like really highly years ago by the Colts, and it was in the 70s, and he ended up getting. I know you're just a young.
That's a great name though, Art Schlichter. I love that name.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Elliot Harrison's going to slap me if I get it wrong, my pal. But yeah, and he got booted out of the league because of gambling issues. I'm pretty sure he went to Ohio State. It could be wrong. But they haven't had a lot of good quarterbacks coming out of that school. So I'd make a claim for Ty Chandler this week if I'm in a deep league, because if Alexander Mattison keeps sucking, they may go to Chandler. And they got the Chargers this week. Madison's got a good matchup. If he can't do it against the Chargers, geez Louise. And by the way, I feel so bad for athletes that have to deal with that racial crap. Come on, man. What the hell? What the hell year are we in? That's just a bunch of crap. If you don't like a guy because he doesn't help your fantasy team or he, hurts your squad, if you're Vikings, go punch your TV or something. Stupid. Anyways, I don't want to go down that one, but Ty Chandler, speculative ad. And then how about Josh Reynolds in Detroit? Josh Reynolds has been good the first 2 weeks. Last week, 2 touchdowns. The week before that, he had 4 catches. And until Jameson Williams comes back, listen, Detroit's going to throw the ball.
Yep.
They got Atlanta this week. That's going to be a high-scoring game. I started Josh Reynolds in a 14-team league last week.
You looked really smart.
Got my stuff on the back.
Yeah, you should.
Of course, I also benched Isaiah Hodgins in that league, so I'm not that smart. And then Tank Dell, small guy with a cool big name. Tank Dell had 72 yards and a touchdown last week. Again, Texans wide receiver. Like it's the flippin' bizarro world, man. I'm in the twilight zone. Like I'm going after Texans wide receivers on my waiver wire. Texans wide receivers.
Well, and I'll say this about Tank Dell. He caught another touchdown pass that was called back because of penalty. So he might even have looked even better if that hadn't been the case. I'm so in on Josh Reynolds. Like that team loves to throw the ball Amon-Ra obviously gets a ton of volume.
Yeah.
Laporta was a great
Yep.
pickup. He was on your list last week, and he was definitely involved.
Start him again this week.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think Reynolds will be very productive. I mean, he's not going to have 2 touchdowns every single game, but he will be
Yeah.
productive.
And I told you guys, and I don't bet. Now, do I put a few dollars down on my fantasy leagues? Yeah. I don't bet. All right. I've been in that wagering industry for a long time because I've been in the fan. But when you work for the NFL for 16 years, you don't bet because you get fired, and you don't mess around with that kind of stuff. And so I just don't bet because, and I also am very superstitious because I know if I bet something, I'm going to jinx it for everybody. So I don't do it. Jared Goff has had multiple touchdown passes in all but one of his last 10 home games. Every time he's gone over the 1.5 touchdown pass mark, wherever you DraftKings, wherever you play. Every time it's easy money. Every time. So, and he's got Atlanta this week. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. And that should be a high scoring game. Let's get to some of the questions here, Tass, before we close out the show. First one from David Hastings, 23. I'm in an extremely deep league where no one is available at running back. Who would you target? Who would you target when every RB1 and RB2 isn't available? You're looking for guys who maybe you're going to like. I mean, Devon Achane's probably gone in that kind of league. Ty Chandler might be gone in that kind of league. If every 1 or 2 is gone, is Matt Breida available? I mean, he's going to be the starter for the Giants the next 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe him. Deuce Vaughn? I mean, like throw a dart?
Yeah, Dowdle or Vaughn is an interesting dart.
Right. Well, he's saying every RB2 is gone. Like that means Dowdle's gone. I don't know. But Deuce Vaughn maybe floating around out there. Potentially, if you're in such a deep league. Salvan Ahmed? I mean, honestly, like I'm just thinking of like off the top of my head, running backs
Craig Reynolds,
who are starters who get hurt.
Craig Reynolds, if he's there.
Craig Reynolds, yes. Craig Reynolds for sure.
That's in Detroit.
Craig Reynolds is going to play the Montgomery role.
Right.
You watch. You watch. Everybody's going to think Gibbs is going to get 25 touches. It ain't going to happen. They may keep him in that role, which would piss off a lot of people. But
Hubbard, maybe, if he's there, I think that's an interesting thought.
I would think he's got to be gone.
Yeah.
If he's saying every RB1 and every RB2 is gone, we're throwing darts out there for you.
Latavius Murray, I mentioned he's probably not going to do it every week, but there's a shot that they throw him in at the 1 yard line and he punches one in. So
Latavius is like the new Frank Gore. Like, he just keeps going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
Mesothelioma 187. Where'd you come up with that name? What do I do with Cam Akers? Just hold him. Just wait. You don't want to cut him right now. Running backs are like gold, man. Even guys who are benched, like with talent, if he gets traded to the Ravens or like the Browns, you could have something. Hold him. Just hold him. Henry Perez, drop Jalen Warren for Jerome Ford. If you have to drop Jalen Warren, okay, but I wouldn't. I mean, that's a committee. And I made this comparison last night on X. Najee Harris looks like Zeke Elliott in his last year in Dallas, and Jalen Warren looks like Tony Pollard. He looks more explosive. And Najee's a younger guy. I don't know what's happened, but since that great rookie year, I mean, it's gone downhill. He was good in the second half of last year, but they do have the Raiders this week, though. And, like, running back is an S show. So, like, you're going to start Najee this week. But I don't want to drop Jalen Warren. But if he's the guy you got to drop, I'd rather have Jerome Ford.
I just think that in a Tomlin system, if Najee is continuing to be, if he's not performing for 2 more weeks, like Warren will continue to get more opportunities, and it wouldn't be out of the question for him to win the job. Like, and so I think it's worth stashing. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's just like Mike Tomlin wants to win games, and he's going to do what needs.
Typically likes to use one back too.
Right. So the fact that he's already giving Warren run is indicative. Yeah.
And I think Matt Canada needs to maybe go. I was big on Kenny Pickett. He had a bad week 1. Monday night, he had that great pass to Pickens. He had some bad passes, some good ones. I think Canada's holding him back. So that's just me. Henry Perez, Tim Wentz. Why did the fantasy football gods take Nick Chubb from us? Absolutely crushed for that man. I wish I knew. It sucks. Injuries suck, man. And I love running backs. I've been a big fan of running backs ever since I started watching this great game. You know, I remember talking about it last week. You know, the Vikings Eagles were my first game that I ever watched. I watched Wilbur Montgomery, and I loved Wilbur Montgomery, good old number 31. And I'm a Cowboys fan. I love running backs. It breaks my heart to see what's going on right now with the injuries and with what the NFL has done to the backs in terms of devaluing them. It sucks. And there's not, in most leagues, there's nobody to pick up who's going to replace even close to what Nick Chubb will give to you. You hope Jerome Ford is the starter and they don't bring somebody else in if you're going to use your fab budget on him or your priority on waivers, but we'll see. Finally, Josh _ herd 82. Better pick up off the wire for Chubb, Ford, Moss, or Warren. It's Ford for me, but all three should be picked up. And if you're putting them in order, it would be for me Ford, Moss, Warren. But if we don't know what's going on with Jonathan Taylor. If you're looking for a long-term thing, it's definitely Ford. And maybe even that's not going to be long-term. See, there's so many damn questions.
Yeah.
Because we don't know like what they're going to do.
I'd probably lean Moss, just the fact that he came back from injury and immediately got all the work.
And Jonathan Taylor is not guaranteed to come back and play for the Colts either.
Right.
We just don't know. We don't know. Yeah, folks, it's a rough one. Times are tough on these fantasy football streets, as I like to say.
But I would say don't give up. Like, make the move for a running back. Make a choice.
Oh, no.
Because if
don't give up.
you're down 0-2 right now in your league, like, week 3 matters. Like, all these games matter.
Yeah.
So don't give up.
Use your waiver priority. And just keep stacking players, man. Never give up. All right. And like Jimmy Valvano up here with a message about fantasy football. Don't quit, because then you're going to be that guy or that girl in your league that nobody wants to play with. Come on, just keep it up. Just keep up.
You ever seen Galaxy Quest, Fabs? You ever seen that movie?
Galaxy Quest? I've heard of it, but I don't know what that is.
What is Tim Allen movie. Alan Rickman. It's a good one.
All right.
There's a quote in it: "Never give up, never surrender." But I mean, it's like a parody movie, but it's whatever.
Yeah, no. I got
put it on the list.
I've heard it.
Put it on the list.
I'll put it on the list. That list is long. But my list is all going to be horror movies now.
Oh. Once
we get to like late September, all I do is watch horror movies. I love October.
Spooktober.
I love Halloween. I love it. I'm going to decorate the house. I love the horror movies. Love them. Anyways, that's it for this week's edition of the Believe Fantasy Football Show with myself, Michael Fabiano, my pal Tass. Hopefully we helped you with the waiver wire. Come back Thursday. Remember, the shows are not going to be on Thursday, so we can get you in that Thursday night preview. Giants Niners, boy, that should be a lot of fun to watch. And then we'll get all your starts and sits. We'll get all the news for you heading into week 3 of the fantasy season. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. It's only 2 weeks, folks. Even if you're 0-2, keep the faith. Keep pushing forward. All right? I know it's only fantasy football. I'm kind of passionate about it. That keep it up, folks. Good things are coming. Hey, I guess if you're 0-2, it couldn't be worse. We will talk to you guys on Thursday. Have a great week. And don't forget to hit that waiver wire tonight. We're going to need it.